no warning here, so I don't expect there's going to be much of a viewership. In fact, this will just tell me how many of you are so obsessed that you actually have a what do you call it, an alarm for when I go online, which I think is probably no one. But let me just mention that I'm alive to a couple of places, just in case someone gives a toss. There we go. And oh, there's one person watching. Hello, whoever you are, you crazy person. But come two. There's more of you than I thought. Well, I'll wait a few seconds just because I'm curious. By the way, the, the, the chat is all yours. If I can find it again. There we go. If you're able to hear me, oh, wait, let me actually plug in there. There you go. Put the microphone on. Hopefully that's a bit better sound. I don't know if it is, but yeah, if you're here and you're live and you can hear me and you've got access to the chat, go for it and let me know what you think. Where did I disappear that chat to? I've somehow managed to switch it off somewhere. Windows, new window. I might have shut it. Oh, there we go. There's the chat. No, okay, no comments yet, but there are two of you listening apparently, which is surprising the crap out of me. So it's anyway. I was it's oh, there's three of you now. Hello, ironic keyboard. I have a confession to make. You know, that's why I'm doing this at 3 in the morning. It's this will probably lose me my viewership of the current 3 people, but you know, it has to be done. I have to admit that due to my recent insomnia, probably also because I'm drinking espresso with grappa in it, I've been watching the male version of the Kardashians. I've been watching a bit of the Whatever Broad podcast with the guy Brian Atlas and Andrew Wilson. I really just watch it because of Andrew Wilson. He makes it a bit entertaining and a bit fun. And the cool thing is, you know, I've listened to. He's one of the very few YouTubers I actually listen to a little bit because, as far as I can tell, he's the only guy that can actually argue dialectically. But he has a very sharp rhetoric knife, which he doesn't hesitate to use. So I feel he's kind of a kindred spirit in that regard. I did send him a super chat at one point where I asked him, "Hey, do you want to?" Because he debates people for fun. That's what he does, and he's pretty good. You know, he's good at it. I generally like his style, but he said something on, I don't know, some random podcast that I was listening to where he said, "Oh, the Catholics agree with us, but we don't agree with them." And I was like, "Oh, you've done it now, Andrew. I thought we could be friends, but no." So I sent him a little chat and I said, "Hey, would you like to argue? Would you like to have a debate on sedevacantism versus orthobros?" And he read it and he goes, "No, I don't want to do that because I know what you guys are like. You're just going to be like, oh, I agree with you on everything else. I'm a political debater and, whatever." Fair enough if if he doesn't want to argue for the, his faith, let's call it. And, I'm not going to pull the purity spiral that, oh, we should or whatever. I mean, it's fair enough if he doesn't want to do that. But I think he just assumed there was some random, what do you call it, autist that just wanted to like throw Bible quotes at him or something, which is not the case. He was actually, I think he might be live at the moment, actually. I was listening to him just a little while ago, and I think it was a live chat. So, I don't know if it's finished now or what. No, it's still live on the Crucible. It is on the Crucible, isn't it? Chill stream. Yeah, on the Crucible. I think he's live. So I don't know if one of you guys wants to like tell him I'm talking shit about him, because I saw him do that. Some guy was talking shit about him on the internet, and he just goes, "Where is this? Where is this?" He like spoiling for a fight. So I'm not really talking shit about it, but if he's bored, I'm kind of bored and awake. So, but anyway, so just for the record, Andrew Wilson ran away from having a debate with the Kurgan. Just letting you know. I think it would actually be quite fun because I'm assuming, I don't know if this is the case, but I'm assuming he comes from an originally a Protestant background, and then maybe because he's got a brain, or I don't know, the name Wilson doesn't sound particularly Greek, but he looks kind of Greek, you know? Cigarette in one hand, booze in the other, looks a bit oily, got a bit of a pot belly, kind of like that Ron Jeremy look that Greeks have. I think there's some Greek in there, so maybe he was just originally Orthodox, I don't know. But anyway, because I think he probably has a Protestant original background, he probably is better read than I am on the Bible and Bible verses and blah, blah, blah. So if we were going to maybe argue details, with the possible exception of the filioque, because I've sort of looked into that a little bit, you might have generically, superficially, possibly better arguments, but if I was going to argue with him about Catholicism versus Orthodoxy, and by Catholicism, of course, I mean sedevacantism. It's the only Catholicism left. But if I was going to argue that with him, I would probably argue big picture, And he's a fair guy, so I think it would be an interesting conversation. Would definitely be entertaining on a personal level. I don't know if it would be that entertaining for people watching. Maybe they just think, oh, like these spurgs are like spurging about their version of Christianity or whatever. But he's an interesting guy and he's funny, so it's quite cool. He's got some qualities I definitely do not have. I don't know if this, is just temperamentally better, or if it's because he's been doing this for a much longer time, and so he got used to it, or if divine providence, or just constitutionally built that way. But he has an absolutely endless level of patience. I honestly, no, I didn't get invited to it. I challenged him to a debate. I challenged Andrew to a debate, and he backed out of it. Like a coward, like the dirty coward that he is. I sent him a super chat on one of his streams, and I asked him if he wanted to debate sedevacantism versus Eastern Orthodox, and he just ran away, ran for the foothills. He basically said, "No, I don't want to do that." So I guess he knows. Oh, and that he did another thing that I've clipped it. Now I'm just trying to figure out how to like get that little clip and put it in a little video, and then I'll do a video on Andrew Wilson, because he's admitted that Catholics are the only first original true church. He has. It was on the whatever stream, but I clipped that little 15-second proof I got him where I want him. It was I call it a Freudian slip, not Freudian, Freudian, feud between the Catholics and the Ortho and yeah, I won. So that's why he ran away. He knows. So anyway, the thing that man does have though is an unbelievable level of patience. Because I think the whatever podcast is actually kind of, some people criticize it because they say it's just glorifying the degeneracy, and I sort of agree to a certain extent. I kind of also see why they're doing it, and I've built up this narrative in my own head, right? I've got no proof of any of this. This is just my perception. The Brian Atlas guy that runs the Whatever podcast is clearly an autist. He's definitely got some autistic vibe there. Oh, that's a very good point, Merg. I'm gonna get back to that comment just in a second. So the Brian Atlas guy is autistic and French, so he's not gonna get very far with women. And he probably gets laid because he's got a big podcast and whatever. But I think part of his strategy of surrounding himself with all the thoughts that he does is because um, kind of like the guy who did The Fifth Element, right? The director who basically interviewed like 3,000 models until he found one that he could bang and then married her. Now they're divorced and whatever. And she was Mila Jovovich. Is that how you say her name? So, and it's kind of like, I think his way of like becoming a bit famous, and he makes money at it. He makes a lot of money at it, I'm sure. He's doing well for himself, but you can tell that that guy is not husband material, and he says it himself. He doesn't ever want to get married and whatever. He's like autistic, and I don't think he's quite figured women out. He says all kind of. He's got that like almost pickup artist vibe. Not really that he's a pickup artist. He's not, but he's got that sort of like autistic. Oh, if I get with a woman, she has to be like this and like that and like that, like that. Kind of like a video game guy. He's trying to tick boxes. That human beings are not like that. Um, but whatever, he's got a very successful podcast, and he invites on all these like OnlyFans chicks and full-on prostitutes, porn stars, and random guys from what I suppose is called the right. And I swear to God, watching that shit, it's like I have to do it in small doses. Like I can't really watch more than like 20 minutes at a time because I can feel brain cells fucking dying as I'm, you know, as I'm watching this shit. It's just like the level of stupidity, solipsism, and like I don't even know what to call it. It's like I think it would be more fun in some instances to try and talk with a monkey. Um, I'm not joking. I genuinely, it's like what? And some of these women, like one of the arguments that the Andrew talks about is like the argument from force. He says, well, men are stronger than women, therefore they can enforce whatever rules. So women are kind of lucky that men are actually benign, because if we wanted to put you all in cages and just make you to baby machines, we could. And it's obviously a kind of, he applies it sort of rhetorically a bit to like try and slap their brains into like some form of awakening, which rarely succeeds. But I get it. You got to entertain yourself when you're talking with people that are so dumb they can't put a syllogism together. They couldn't spell syllogism, never mind say what it is. They ask him things like, when was the Second World War? From which year to which year? And none of them fucking get it. It's astonishing to me. And he does little things just with a straight face, which I think are hilarious. Like he was trying to get this one woman to just acknowledge his question to the point that she like couldn't get it. So he just said, "Yeah, how would you feel if you didn't have breakfast this morning?" And of course, the answer was, "But I did have breakfast," which is just, if you know, you know, right? If you know, that whole thing comes from a 4chan guy that was describing intelligence in people and how it plays out, and how some people have no internal dialogue and are not capable Oh, hold on a second. Oh yeah, that's fine. Yeah, and just put this on silent. And it's just, the retard, the I don't know, I don't even know what to call it. I think it looks sort of like monkeys. I don't know. Honestly, it was me trying to talk to a monkey about algebra. It's just, and I don't know how he does it. He just patiently just hammers away, and then like he changes tack to like try and get through to them. And I've got to give the man credit. That's commendable. And he does say that he gets a lot of women that like send him texts and say, "Oh, thanks for this," changed sort of my perspective on things, which I'm sure he does get. He doesn't strike me as a dishonest person, so I think he probably what he says is true. Um, so maybe it is helping people, but it's like, my God, if you've got to help people from that level of depth of degeneracy, then how screwed are we, sort of thing. And the fact that he does this regularly, day after day, week after week, or whatever it is, I don't know what his schedule is like. It's really quite something. I don't know that the Whatever podcast itself is good, because I hope, I pray to God that the level of women that he puts on that show is so abysmal for the most part. Okay, occasionally you get a decent lady that's got a brain that can actually sort of function. And by the way, I'm not saying that just because a woman might be a prostitute, she doesn't necessarily have a brain, because that's not the case. As I think some of you know, I worked as a bodyguard for some time, and oldest profession in the world, mercenary, and second oldest profession in the world is being a whore. So kind of had the same clients, and I would talk to these women, um, and they're actually quite interesting people. A lot of some of them are just dumb; they can't do anything else, and that's what they do. But some of them have got very fucked up histories. A few of them are doing it by choice, pretty much, and the ones that are sort of choosing that for themselves, they can be quite intelligent, quite well read. They tend to have a lot of time on their hands. And they can be quite honest, they can be quite direct. Um, so just because a woman is a whore doesn't necessarily mean that she's incapable of doing logic. I've never subscribed to that. In fact, sometimes it's a little bit more the other way around. But anyway, the point is, a lot of the women that he has on there, regardless of their level of degeneracy, right? But never mind that for a moment. Um, their ability to use their brain is like fucking nil. And I think that that is not doing a service to. So I hope that if that is the average in America, oh my fucking God, then that whole country is just burning to the ground. You can't salvage any if that is the average, and I don't think it is, because I have some friends in the States and whatever, and certainly some women from the South that I know personally are very intelligent ladies. They're like well read, well educated, and they're cool. They're just cool people. So of course I'm not gonna, America's a huge country and whatever, but certainly the slice of life that the Whatever podcast presents you with is grim, man. It's fucking grim. So in that respect, I think, I don't know if it's doing anybody a service, because a young guy watches that and starts to think, maybe he's watching hours of that shit, because it's kind of entertaining, and some of the stuff is funny, and some of the stuff is just so out there that you think, what? But they might get into it's like watching Hollywood movies and thinking, oh, that's reality, right? Like the A-Team. Hey, you can just shoot a bunch of bullets and nobody ever gets hit. And of course, oh, what is that? The bug just tried to fuck my ear. Oh, the stink bugs are back. I don't know if that was a stink bug. You guys probably saw it better than I did. But anyway, the point is, if you're watching hours of that shit and you start to think that that's how women are, it's whoa, that's not gonna be a good basic foundation with you to walk into, the idea, or even getting with somebody or marriage, or it's just like, what? I'm gonna become a monk on a fucking hilltop somewhere, on a mountaintop somewhere. Let me read through a bit of this. This was quite an interesting comment here by Monk Magloramaxis. Got invited? No, I didn't. So it says, the attempt to spread Orthodox Christianity through online debates reeks of the self-referential slop that the new atheists did. I think that's a brilliant comment, and deserves some kind of little award. There you go. I'm gonna put that one, add to the broadcast. There. That's it. It'll entertain dopamine addicts, but as atheism was dying while this occurred, it's not a working strategy. Possibly. Sounds like brain rot, more extreme than the Dear Girl anime. I don't know what the Dear Girl anime is. But yeah, the Whatever podcast is absolute fucking trash. It's, like I said, it's the Kardashians for men, and I'm ashamed, but I have to, admit it. My priest is probably not awake at this time, so I'm confessing to the chat. I watched the Whatever podcast for, in 20 minutes sprees, like here and there, but probably watched maybe a grand total of 3 or 4 hours of it, which demonstrably lowered my IQ by at least 10 points, I think, permanently, probably. Ron Chum says, those women strike me as the type who have never been challenged on anything. Yeah, and it makes you sort of wonder if the whole of America is like that. I watched one. I don't know if it's a recent one, because like it's, because I watched a couple of them, like some of them pop up on my phone or whatever, and then I just like click randomly on whatever comes up. There was one that had a professional whore, prostitute. I think she called herself a legal prostitute. So from the Bunny Ranch in wherever that is in the United States, Nevada or Arizona or something like that. Anyway, she was stunning girl, very beautiful looking. Like she had some sort of orange dress on that was like all holes, so you could kind of. It didn't leave a lot to the imagination. I mean, she wasn't naked, but wasn't far off. A very pretty girl, and apparently quite young. I don't know what the age was, but you could tell she's like in her 20s, maybe early 20s even. And she's obviously been doing this for some time. But most of the time, she was making sense. When she talked, she didn't strike me as one of these rabid feminists with absolutely insane ideas. And she had a take on things which I think all of the men on that panel couldn't relate to, because I think Andrew Wilson he's been a dog in his life. He was a degenerate fucker like before he converted, like I was. So I think he has an understanding of some of this stuff. But um, like I said, I have some understanding of prostitutes because I uh, interacted with them, not on a wasn't hiring them for their services, but I was being hired for services to the same people they were being hired for their services, and so we'd end up talking. Sometimes I'd give them a lift back to wherever they were going to or whatever. I did get offers. I mean, they did offer me like, hey, would you like to, get with me? And I was like, no, thanks. And I was like, no, but I'm not going to charge you. I just like you. I think you're a cool dude. I was like, no, thanks. Oh, you got a girlfriend? They're like, yeah, I do. And say, oh, and you don't cheat on her? I'm like, no. And we're like, oh, that's fucking rare. That interested them more than anything else that I did. Um, so we did talk. We had pretty long conversations, and I got an understanding of their sort of life to a certain extent. And this girl clearly, is in that category. And she said a few things that like the guys couldn't really relate to. And Candace Owen was on it. So if you want to see that live stream, there was Candace Owens on that same live stream on the whatever podcast, and the girl with the orange dress, I think, was called Lexi. That or maybe, yeah, I don't know. I don't. I'm not good with names. They said the names of the some of the girls, and I think they said their name was Lexi, or maybe it was Amy or something. I don't know. Anyway, um, the point is that she was making some decent points about like men and the kind of men that go to prostitutes, and the fact that there was also an older prostitute there who was like, she said she was in her 40s, but she looked like fucking in her early 60s with a lot of makeup on. But anyway, um, and she said like, oh, some married guys come to me because their wife's not having sex with them anymore, and I try and fix their marriage, or I get like couples that come to me because the woman wants to learn how to do some specific sex act on her husband, and like they want me to practice it on him, whatever. That pretty degenerate fucking out there stuff. But the fact is that that is what happens. That there are guys that do that, and I know because I've heard it from the prostitute side, and I also heard it from the side of guys that I know that I knew. I don't live in that same country anymore, but um, some guys I used to know quite well, and just be friends, have a drink with, and then tell me their problems, their life, or whatever, and then tell me like they going to prostitute, and I could never understand it. I was like, well, why the fuck would you go to a like why? It's like some of them then don't want to take the risk of like picking up a girl, especially if they're married or whatever. But like a lot of married guys actually do use prostitutes, and I was like, that's fucking weird to me. Like, why would you do that? And it's like, oh well, I haven't had sex with my wife in 2 years, and I was like, well, whose fucking fault is that? I mean, I can't imagine, if my wife suddenly said, oh well, I'm not gonna have sex with you anymore or whatever, or it's like, well, I can't, I'd be like, well, then that's not a fucking marriage. Like, marriage is basically an agreement that you belong to each other physically, and that you're gonna have children and raise them together. That's what marriage is essentially. If you're not gonna have kids, and you're not gonna have sex with each other, whenever one of you wants it, pretty much. Um, what the fuck? Then you're roommates. I don't see the point. So, but the thing is that this lady, this woman was, oh, no worries, dude. I didn't. Hello, Kurgan. Sorry to be late. I didn't announce it at all. I just came online, so you would pop up. But anyway, the point is, like, this lady was saying stuff about the kind of clients they get and whatever, and all the men were like sort of a little bit sort of lambasting her, because they were saying, oh, that's only like total losers that do that, whatever. And it's like, well, I don't know, maybe I've just lived a very unsheltered life, but there's all sorts of people out there, and they have all sorts of problems. I know of guys that were in their 30s and were virgins that never been with a woman, and then they said, fuck it, I'm gonna hire a professional to like make me get over the fact that I'm scared of women. I don't know what to do, what to talk with them, and they hired professionals for months, some of them over a year at a time, like regularly. They'd like save up and then like get a girl to come over and do stuff with them. And they did that because whatever, some of them had been sexually abused when they were kids, so didn't really know, they were confused about their own sexuality because of shit that had been done to them. And as men, they were like, didn't know where else to go, who to talk to about it. And in some cases, it well, I think in all the cases that I'm aware of anyway, of the guys that I knew that had that kind of problem, because I came across a few of them, um, they're now with girlfriends. They don't use prostitutes anymore, so it helped them fix something, and there is an element of like sexual healing, I think, that a prostitute can provide. I'm not saying they're all like horse with a heart of gold and the pretty woman story in the film is just how it is. I'm not saying that at all. Some of them will probably mug you, drug you, and fucking steal every cent you got in your wallet and not even have the decency to give you any sex. I don't know. I mean, there's all sorts of people, like I said, but I do think that there is an element of that that absolutely does happen. I'm certain of it. And try and pretend that that doesn't exist, I don't think is helpful. And just because you're coming from a uh, Catholic or an Orthodox perspective, I've never believed that it's a good thing to hide anything, to sweep things under the carpet and pretend that, like, that it's not, uh, things are not as they are. Or for example, one of the topics they go on about is how the original contract of marriage, what marriage is, and how a woman should be, and how a man should be, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but they're just words. Most of these people don't have any fucking concept of what an actual marriage looks like, feels like, or they can't even imagine it because they've never been exposed to it. Even people of my age have never really been exposed to it. My parents divorced, when I was still a teenager. It's all just fucking theory for most people. So, and yet the difference between an actual marriage and the modern day version of, the secularized version of marriage is fucking light years away. I mean, I actually remember the comparison that I could make when I was actually reading it in the Bible, Ephesians and Colossians and whatever. Yeah, I think it's definitely in Ephesians. That was the bit that like sparked me off, which where it describes the relationship between a man and a woman, and it's like by reading it, I got it. I was like, fuck, oh, that's what it's supposed to be. And I was busy going through my second divorce at that time, secular divorce, and I kind of got it, and I was like, oh, and the only like sort of parallel or not parallel, but the only yeah, I suppose parallel analogy that I could come up with was when I was a little kid. When I was like 3 years old, I remember there was this little girl called Susanna. I just remember her name for some reason, who used to come and play at my grandparents' place where I used to live. And we'd dig into the dirt together. And we didn't really talk that much. It was like we were just digging into the dirt and whatever. I had my cars and we're looking at ants or some shit. But I really appreciated that time with her, and I thought, oh, it's cool. And then I don't know if she moved away. I have no idea because my grandparents are dead, and I don't think anyone remembers who the hell she was. But sometimes I wonder, what happened to that little girl? Who did she become? What's her life be like? But the thing is, like, I really liked her. It was like an innocent sort of friendship, like I cared about her, and she was a girl, and like I only had a brother, and played with my other friends that were all boys, so it was kind of different. I mean, I had female cousins and stuff, but there was something pure about like the little friendship that we had. And in a sense, a marriage is absolutely a sacred thing. It's a very beautiful thing if when it's basically two people that really share each other's inner world deeply, and that's the whole point. I I think it's there. I think maybe the writing is all over my face. I don't know. I think it's important to remember that because a lot of people haven't got a clue what a marriage is. So they say all these right things. They say, oh, but a man should be the protector and the woman should be the nurturer and blah blah blah. But they have no experience of what the hell they're talking about. They don't understand that yes, the correct way to be in a marriage is absolutely astonishing, and it provides a kind of beauty and joy that you can't get any other way. But at the same time, you have to be able to put up with and overcome and push through all sorts of difficulties together. So like that's why, in the real church, the Catholic Church, divorce is just not an option, and the joke goes like, well, divorce is not an option because it's until death. So, murder becomes an option sometimes. And it's kind of the running joke of Catholics. But, it's a whole different story if you know that you're with that person and that's it. You're with that person until the day you drop dead, no matter what they do, no matter how fucked up they are or become or you become. And, ultimately it's down to your own word, because like you can make the promise and break it, right? People do it all the time. But if both of you are really 100% in it, and you know that like, no, fuck it, this actually means more to me than even if I drop dead, I'm not gonna like, I'll die before I break this thing. If you're both in that way of thinking, it changes everything, because then when you first come across a difficulty or a problem or a disagreement or whatever, well, fuck it, you gotta fix it. You can't run away. You can't just fuck off. You can't just like divorce because of irreconcilable differences or whatever the fuck it is. You got to deal with it, and forcing you to deal with it is what makes the marriage down the line even more beautiful and even more worthwhile. Because don't get me wrong now, but it's a little bit like war, right? I mean, if you're like stuck in a foxhole or a trench with some guy that like, oh well, he's all right, but fuck it, he never keeps the fucking ammo close by, and he doesn't clean his rifle, and sometimes he falls asleep on guard duty, and fuck him. And he's thinking like, this fucking guy has to have a coffee first thing in the morning. I fucking hate coffee. The smell of it makes me nauseous. Dirty fucking bastard. Only showers once a week because he's so fucking. Oh, you gotta be awake for the enemy if it charges. Oh, fuck that. But you then go through 3 years of war where you fucking survive all sorts of shit, bullets flying past you. He saves your fucking life a couple of times. You save his life a couple of times. You go through all that. You can't help but form a bond of brotherhood, which, is a very different thing from a marriage, that sort of feeling between men. That even if you were an asshole, even if you were a guy you don't like, going through all that shit together will make you tolerate him to a point where you're like, yeah, I'm not gonna kick him out of my fucking house if he turns up at 2 in the morning, right? Because if he was the kind of guy that you would kick him out of your house at 2 in the morning, you'd have probably slit his throat while he was asleep in that time in the trench, right? And a marriage is a little bit like that. You go through shit, you have a baby, or maybe she has a miscarriage, or you fucking one of your kids is autistic, or you know whatever, you have an accident and you fucking become a cripple, or she develops a drinking problem, whatever the fuck. I'm exaggerating, I'm coming up with some pretty drastic shit, but even if it's just like she's got some ideas of feminism that are somewhere stuck in the back of her head, or you do, or you've got some ideas on like, oh, the male pattern, I've got to be a strong in the male that just puts his foot down, and you've got the wrong attitude. All sorts of shit can go wrong, right? You can have stuff between you that's not cool. And getting over it and going through it and figuring it out together makes you absolutely the whole thing worthwhile and stronger. So um, the people on that panel, not only do they not have any idea about this stuff, but I don't think they're doing anything to present to the world that concept. So on this whatever podcast, all you see is dumb whores for the most part. We're just like, hey, yeah, I got Simps, and I've got my pay pigs, and yeah, that's it. That's how I'm gonna make my money. And they're like, but don't you think that'll affect your ability to get with a high quality man? What the fuck is this high quality man? And they're like, and the thing is that I think that girl with the orange dress, she basically said something along the lines of, I'm just in this to make as much fucking money as I can, as quickly as I can, and eventually I'll retire from this. And I know a lot of prostitutes don't retire because the money's too good, and then they're like, well, what the fuck else am I gonna do? But if she were smart, I don't know, maybe she invests in real estate, has a bunch of properties that she rents out. She can just live off that income, doesn't need to do that anymore. Um, generally a girl that's got a brain on her that is doing that work is generally very highly sexed, but they don't have a problem getting guys to have sex with them just for fun too. And actually, she mentioned about a date that she went on, because she goes like, yeah, I put it on my profile that like I'm not into anything serious. I just like want to have a quickie or whatever, like a couple of night stands and whatever. And she related this date she went on with this guy who just thought he was going to get laid no matter what because he had a Lamborghini and whatever. And she was like, no, fuck that, which I think is quite hilarious, right? Because she will fuck a random stranger for money. But a guy that's trying to impress her with a Lamborghini and like a cool house and everything, she's like, no, fuck you, I'm not fucking you, just because he went about it like wrong, sort of thing, which I thought was funny, and I could relate to because I've known, in my degenerate days, women that were married, that were with millionaires, that like are fucking all sorts of women that will do all sorts of shit with, you know, the guy I was back then, that it wouldn't even do with their own fucking husbands, or with other men that they've been with. They'll make some guy wait 3 months and they were with me in bed within 15 minutes or whatever. So it was, if you understand women a little bit, you know that like that they do that sort of stuff. And she was saying, well, when I eventually like quit in that, if I want to find a guy for a long-term relationship or even marriage or maybe even kids, well, then I'll find one then. And the whole panel is basically saying you're not going to find a high quality guy for that. And um, and they were also saying, oh, it's very shameful for a man to like, if it's known that his wife or whatever used to be a prostitute, it's he loses status automatically. And I think Andrew said like, even a guy who's homeless will feel more of a man than the guy who like lets other people fuck his wife or whatever. And I think he was talking about actively fuck his wife at after they're married. So, and there's absolutely truth to that. I'm sure it's valid, but there are definitely guys out there that wouldn't give a shit. There are definitely guys out there that say, hey, she's fucking hot. She gives me all the sex that I want because she's retired from it, but she still has a very high sex drive. I get on with her. She's pretty honest. She's direct with me. She doesn't bullshit me. And I can put up with whatever parts of her being a human being, like, are irritating or whatever, because every human being fucking is. Every human being has got flaws and whatever. And whatever, maybe he can tolerate whatever her flaws are, and he doesn't really give a shit about her past. And I think there's quite a large proportion of men that wouldn't give a shit about their past. There's a much smaller proportion of men that not only wouldn't give a shit about her past, but wouldn't give a shit if people knew. There's a very cool scene in the film Sexy Beast with the British actor, I forget his name. But if you've seen the film Sexy Beast, like the main character is married to an ex porn star. And like this guy comes in there and goes, have you seen your wife? Have you seen what she did? She's fucking disgusting. She's a pig. And the guy that's saying that is played by Ben Kingsley, and he's a really fucking evil, toxic, psychopath type guy. So they're kind of scared of him. And the dude is like, yeah, I've seen what she does, whatever. And he's kind of like a bit embarrassed by it because, and his wife's there as well. I don't want to spoil the movie for you if you haven't seen it, because I don't want to give you spoilers. But basically, he feels bad because the guy's trying to make his wife feel bad. But for himself, he doesn't give a shit. He's like, well, I don't give a fuck what this fucking toxic little dwarf, evil, psycho killer guy thinks. I love that woman and that's that. And she loves me and fuck it. Um, and I thought that, there are guys like that. And then that's one type of man, in this film. He's sort of like a relatively meek dude, even though he's a criminal and whatever. And another version of it is, I think it's called Get Porter, that film with Mel Gibson, which is actually a remake of an older film with Michael Caine, I think, if I'm if I remember right. Anyway, the get ported thing is like, he comes out of jail, he went to jail, didn't give up the other people, and there's like they owe him $77,000 or whatever, and nobody wants to fucking pay him, and he's just like, fuck you, I'm gonna get my money. I don't care how many of you fucks I gotta kill. And like the woman, he got caught because of the woman that he was with, who like betrayed him, and she's basically a prostitute and stuff. And anyway, that's a different personality of guy, but he's also a guy who doesn't give a fuck that what anybody would say. And he's the kind of guy that if he did get with that woman and get married with them, whatever, down the line, they stop being criminals and whores and whatever. And some guy were to like, hey man, I fucked your wife. Oh, she used to be a prostitute or whatever. Or she's on video. He'd be like, yeah, I'm gonna break your fucking nose if you're trying to make her feel bad. So what? So there are guys like that. They're definitely a minority, but I don't think that if she's smart about it, if she's quick about it, if she makes her money fast enough, she keeps her looks. I don't think she'll struggle too much to find um, a guy of that sort. They're rare. They're maybe not. Um, you don't shake a tree and a dozen of them fall out, but they're definitely there, and I think she could probably find one like that. Um, the so I don't think that the guys on the panel that were saying to her, "Oh, you're never going to find anybody," I don't think they were necessarily right. However, what I do think they are probably right about is that even a guy that's willing to put up with that, I think would have some reservations about having kids, because it's one thing, for you and whatever your wife to have a history and people know about it and maybe talk behind your back or whatever, but they probably wouldn't dare talk to your face, especially if you're the kind of guy that would punch them out, whatever. But it's a whole different kettle of fish when you've got kids involved, and now the kids are gonna be, when they grow up, their little friends at school are gonna like fucking say, "Hey, look at what your mom was doing," whatever. That's fucked up. Um, that is the part that is, I think, difficult for a guy to like deal with, even more than the fact that his wife was a prostitute or whatever. So in that respect, I think the whatever guys didn't necessarily have that understanding of reality. They tend to be a certain extent a little bit black and white, a little bit more than I think maps onto reality well. But anyway, so that was one of the little criticisms. But the other thing is that because they're just constantly generating the same sort of content, really, with the same sort of attitudes, it's quite kind of. I think it adds, it fuels the. I think it fuels the idea that the degeneracy is absolutely prevalent everywhere. So I don't know. I think it would be quite cool to maybe have a. What's the opposite of whatever? What's the antonym of whatever? Specificity or something. I don't know. If I had the ability, the hey shit, maybe there's a whole bunch of women out there that are like traditional wives. They probably wouldn't want to come on a podcast. But what I'm saying is, it would be quite cool to have a podcast with people whose IQ is above room temperature, that they can actually string together three sentences without contradicting themselves, and that understand what a syllogism is and what basic logic and basic reasoning skills are. Um, to counter that sort of idea, that sort of concept. So yeah, I don't know if there are a bunch of women that are of the 13 of you watching this, or whoever comes on later, that want to have that kind of conversation about like how you see marriage and that sort of thing. That'd be quite an interesting chat to have, I think. So that would be my contention. I mean, I've just figured this out while I'm talking to you guys. It would be probably quite a cool thing to do, to have a chat with women that like respect the concept of marriage and understand it better. I also think that those type of women are very unlikely to come onto a podcast, because it's just not, what they would do. Um, but maybe their husbands would. I don't know. It's an idea. And of course, that will lead into all sorts. One thing that I saw the Andrew Wilson guy do, he was talking to a bunch of, I can't remember if it was on the whatever podcast or something, but anyway, there was a bunch of feminist sort of OnlyFans type chicks like having a go at him, telling him, "Oh, what a horrible bastard he probably is to his wife." So I said, "Oh, you know what? Hold on." And he went and called her. She was already in bed, and she like came down. She's like, "All right, Andrew told me that you guys think I'm some abused wife in the fucking basement or something. So this better be good because I got out of bed for this." And she just listened to whatever they were going to say, and she fucking wrecked them. I mean, she wasn't taking any prisoners. She was spitting out dialectic, but it was laced with, like, if Andrew's got a pretty sharp tongue and a pretty sharp wit, and I relate to that because I can do the same. But this woman was like, she was going in for the curb stomping, man. She was, at the same time that she was like throwing dialectic, throwing ninja stars at them, she was also like, and you're a heifer that thinks that she's like an 8 when you're really not even a 3. And it's like, there was like personal ad hominems which were like also rooted in dialectic, so they couldn't even refute them. They were just brutal, man. I was just like, and she did this for about, I don't know, 20 minutes or something. And then she said, "Well, all right, I've fucked you all up now. I'm going back to bed, and now you can get back to talking to the nice Wilson." And she fucked off and put Andrew back on. I was like, whoa, this, it was that was hilarious. That was really, I really enjoyed that. It was actually funny because some people think that Andrew is quite harsh with some of these women in like the realities that he presents them with, but he's not really, and he's actually quite gentle, and he sees if the woman is trying to like engage her brain, he like he's quite charitable, I think. Keeps it entertaining and a little bit clickbaity sometimes, but that's the game, right? But his wife, man, she was she she took no prisoners. It was really hilarious to watch. I didn't know that, I didn't know the whatever the stream that was on. Otherwise, I would have put it in the chat because it was worth watching. But yeah, anyway, so those are my thoughts on Andrew Wilson, and I'll leave the option for him to come and debate me, Ortho Bros versus Proper Catholics. At any time, Andrew, any time, any place. But he ran away. Just so we're clear, he ran away like a coward, um, and claiming that he's only a political commentator, political debater, not a theologian. Well, I'm not a theologian either, but I'll argue with anyone about most things. So yeah, that was it really. I was kind of bored, and I thought, well, I'll come on stream and see what people are up to. So if you got anything to shoot in the chat, or you want to change topic, or you got a question, or I don't know, tell me how your day is going. That's I don't want to impersonate the Fraser character, the TV show Fraser, where it goes, "I'm listening," but I am. Although the chat seems pretty dead, but there's 13 of you, just like the real apostles plus the betrayer. Come on, isn't there a Judas in there somewhere that'll start up a chat? While I wait for you guys to come up with something, I'm going to have a sip of water. Yes, Wade Wilson says his wife is Rachel Wilson. She has a YouTube channel. I got her videos recommended once. She's good. Yeah, she's funny. And I think because she's a woman, she can get away with like cutting through all the bullshit a lot quicker. Aha, Wade Wilson says we have a snake here somewhere. Well, 2 people dropped out, so yeah, she cuts through. I think Andrew sometimes has to present his argument, couch, very patiently present his situation. She just goes for the jugular right away. She's like, "Oh, you're talking shit. What you're saying is fucking nonsense. You know it. I know it. Everybody in this fucking panel knows it." Um, because she doesn't have to get over that little hurdle of, oh, big nasty evil man making the little woman cry. she's a woman herself, so she's like, "No, you stupid bitch, I know your game. I'm fucking coming for you." So it's uh, it's quite entertaining. I didn't know she's got a YouTube channel, but yeah, might look it up. You know, the arguments are always the same basically. So apparently, she's written a book. I think she mentioned about feminism being related to occultism. Actually, oh, it's downstairs. I have a book about feminism and how it's essentially satanic, how it stems from occultism. I'm kind of wondering now if she wrote that book that I've got. I don't remember who the author is. I thought it was a man, but maybe there's more than one book with that topic. So yeah, I've finished my coffee. I've had my water. So what else can we talk about? Oh, fucking shot a mouse today. I was sitting in the kitchen. I've been hearing this little scratchy noise somewhere in the house. I know there's a fucking creature, but I couldn't figure out what it was. And I was just sitting in the kitchen eating late. I got hungry, so I got up and can't remember what it was that I ate. Oh yeah, fried mushrooms. Our own mushrooms that I just plucked out of the trees. One of the trees that I'm making into firewood has got mushrooms growing out of it. It's really nice. You know, I was eating that, and then I just saw this little fucking mouse like jump up and like crawl into the pantry thing, and I'm like, oh, you know, there's not many things that sort of give me the ick, to borrow a phrase from Andrew Wilson, but big cockroaches and rats, they kind of disgust me a little bit. And I thought, ah, fuck. So I had a pellet gun that the kids, and I just, you know, put a little pellet in it. And I was like, I moved the bag that I saw going behind of, and it jumped out and like ran between my legs, sort of thing. And I thought of stomping on it, but I was like, oh no, I've got my slippers on, you know, my house slippers. I'm not gonna fucking stomp on it with them. And it ran up behind a counter, and I put a torch on it so I could see it. So I like poof, whacked it with a pellet gun, which didn't have an exit hole, so just an entrance hole. I was like quite surprised. Pretty shitty pellet gun, and chucked him out. So that was my hunting for the day. And the thing is, when I went to chuck him out, the cat's at the front door with a fucking rat. I mean, still a mouse, but it was like this big. To me, that's a fucking rat now. And it had killed it, and I was like, and it was trying to go into like where I stacked the wood to like. I was like, no, 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 don't leave the fucking body amongst the wood. Just fuck off and go eat him somewhere else. So the cat got the big one, and I guess I got the little one. But I'm a bit disappointed that you know, the cats should take care of that sort of shit. I think maybe I'm feeding them a bit too much. So that's my story for the evening. Come on. We're the quiet ones here. See that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of you that have made a comment. There's another 6 of you hiding there, just quietly listening in. Maybe you're driving your car home or something. I don't know. Let's see, it's probably about what, 9 o'clock at night, somewhere in the United States, where most of you are, I would guess. Maybe 9, maybe 8, maybe 10. But anyway, I'm quite impressed that there was like 18 of you at one point came on. It was quite interesting. Come on, any topic. It's a free for all. Any question, any topic. Otherwise, I'll have to go and carry on reading my book of People of the Sea. Interesting character. A book that I'm reading at the moment is by James Warren, who built, oh, well, he's dead now, but he's the guy who designed the Warren catamarans, and people like, you know, build them. They buy the plans and they build them themselves. And he clearly lived in another era. I mean, he died in his 90s. I think he committed suicide actually in his 90s. But yeah, but a very interesting guy. And obviously, he lived in another time where you could do the shit that he did, and he basically sailed across the ocean and across the Atlantic like with 2 women and he was involved with both of them. Uh, and that aspect of it is quite unusual, especially for the time he did it in. Which was the 50s and 60s and 70s, 60s and 70s, yeah, but the 50s was a bit early for that sort of thing. So again, I'm not condoning it or whatever, but it is. He had a definitely interesting life. I mean, one of the women committed suicide, and they were survivors of. Both women, I think, were survivors of the Russian occupation of Germany after the Second World War. So they got through like vicious shit. And, hello, Woolly Ram. Oh, Woolly Ram, you got to liven up the chat here. I want theological questions, gun questions. Tell me how the war is going in Israel, where you are, because we're interested. We want to know how things are. So give us some talking topics here. Wade Wilson says the cats should take inspiration from their ancestors instead of sitting around watching Netflix and eating carbs. It's sad but true. I don't let them in the house, but I think they just sit outside and listen. I've been watching Twin Peaks, and I think they're paying attention. And Wade Wilson says, "Do you think we'll get to know what's going on in the Antarctic thanks to China and Russia? It looks like they know. But I'm sure there's plenty of people that fucking know, but I'm not one of them. I've got my ideas. I absolutely do believe that the Nazis had bases there. I absolutely am almost certain that I know where some of those bases are because there's a mountain range there that they've blocked off from anybody going near there because supposedly they're protecting some wild fucking Antarctic bird that lives only there, and it's a lot of bullshit. Um, the religious people saying, "Oh, that's where the watches are like were chained, and now they're like coming out, and that's why the whole world is going to go into the end times." And I don't know how much I believe in that, but there's definitely something going on in Antarctica because if you read my books, Nazi Moon, remember it's a big tome like this. It's called Nazi Moon, and it's actually a trilogy. There's 3 books in that book because I still haven't found a guy that's going to do me a decent cover for the 3rd book, so I haven't issued the 3 books. Book 1 and book 2 you can find on Amazon and digitally. I don't know if I've put book 2 on my ebook store, but I will at some point. But I've written book 3, but I haven't issued it as an individual book. So if you want to read the whole trilogy, the only way you can find it right now is on Nazi Moon, which is about this thick. It's 827 pages. I know because 828 pages is the maximum you can have with Amazon books. And I filled it in. I had to make sure it fit in. But if you read that book, which has got a lot of science and a lot of historical facts mixed in with the fiction, then you'll know that in the 50s, the Americans dropped 3 nuclear bombs on Antarctica. That was after, in 46/47, Admiral Byrd went to Antarctica with a fucking army and was supposed to be there for 4 or 5 months, and they came back after like 4 to 6 weeks later with their tail between their legs. It's still classified how many men died on that mission. They lost planes, they had tanks, they had all sorts of shit. And when he was coming back, he was being interviewed by journalists from El Mercurio, and he basically told them, "We got to prepare for like craft of alien origin." And he didn't mean little green men. He meant fucking Nazis from polar origins that can do shit that we can't do. The Nazis absolutely had anti-gravity technology. The way they got it is really kind of weird and fucked up, but they did. I'm absolutely certain of it. There's books on that Joseph Farrell talks about that quite a bit, but there's another guy, Stephen, I can't remember his name, who's probably the most preeminent guy that's dug through archive to find what was really going on there. The Nazis did rediscover anti-gravity machines. It ties in with my book, The Face on Mars, which is not fiction at all. So if you read The Face on Mars and you read the Nazi Moon is fiction, but it's got a lot of real shit in there. And you can tell where it is because I differentiate the real stuff from the fiction. In the first book, I make a point of it. There's like author's notes for each book, and they're all there as well, where I explain, how you can tell what's the real stuff, what's the assumed stuff, and whatever. And most of it is presented in the first book so that you've got a background for what happens in the later books. And there is going to be another trilogy. That series is not finished. It ends at a particular point where, if you think of it as season one, that's season one. Hopefully, the next three books are not going to take me 30 years to finish. Um, because from conception to the end of it, it's almost 30 years. From the first book I wrote in 2011, the second one 2013, and there was this 10-year gap because a lot of shit happened in my life, and I finished book three. Was it this year or late last year? I can't remember. No, late last year, I think. So 10 years in the making between book two and book three. That's when I start the next trilogy, the continuation. It's not going to take me 10 years, I promise you. But yeah, that's what's going on there. Fuck knows. I wish that I could get my own little anti-gravity machine to go and check shit out, but I would probably shoot it out of the sky. But if they're all white hats out there in charge, I'm ready to serve, as long as you give me my own spaceship and my own crew, and give me a little bit of leeway on what I'm gonna do. Check out some other planets, just explore. I'd be the scout. In traveler terms, I'd like to be the retired scout that still does some work for the Imperium, but is really just out there exploring space. Wade Wilson says, oh yeah, they invaded Lebanon for the third time now, right? Yeah, apparently they did. Willie Ram says, Jerusalem seems to be in the eye of the storm. A bunch of American Jews are here for the high holidays. Constant jet-ending rumblings overhead. Oh, that doesn't sound too good. Merck says, any truth to the claims of certain people being the descendants of Nazi leaders? How does that tie in with the Nazi moon base and the anti-grav tech? I'm absolutely sure that some people are the children of Nazi leaders. I don't know the specifics, but it makes, the Nazis were pretty clever in a bunch of ways. I absolutely do not believe that Hitler died in the bunker. Um, he died in Argentina, as far as I'm aware, in the early 60s, I think. And this was quite well documented by a guy who wrote a book, funnily enough, in Argentina, written. The title is Hitler Died in Argentina. It's in Spanish. And then, like 20 or 30 years later, a bunch of American guys basically took that Argentinian guy's book and basically rewrote it in English and, added their own bits and pieces here and there. And they called it Grey Wolf, but really it was kind of the same work the other guy had done. They had plenty of bases around the world. They had, there's like Carlos de Bariloche in Argentina was a huge Nazi enclave. I mean, they had schools in full-on German with the picture of the Führer on the walls and the Nazi flags on the walls. And there was a large enough territory in Argentina. There was a small country where you could only get in if you had SS papers. It was like, there's a guy called Peter Levanda who wrote about this, and he discussed with Joseph Farrell on a live stream, I think, or on a YouTube video somewhere, where he basically said, he's one of these nerd researchers. Peter Levanda writes some very interesting stuff about some aspects of the spiritual realm of America and how there's all these gigantic mounds of tombs and stuff that they don't really know who it was. And he's got a whole theory about there's an essence of evil to a certain extent that affects America in certain respects and certain areas in America in certain respects. A very interesting concept anyway. But he was like studying these Nazis in like really detail, and he basically took a taxi to go to this fucking place where it was a Nazi enclave, where he got out of the taxi and there's like fucking guys with machine guns speaking in German. It's like, where's your papers? Who are you? And he's like, oh, well, yeah, I think I'll just get back in the taxi now, thanks. And he just fucked off, because they even had, apparently in this Nazi encampment, which was huge, it was like literally like a small country within Argentina. The size of it was like, over 10,000 hectares or something. They had torture chambers in there, and people disappeared, and it was pretty grim shit. The NASA engineers were all fucking Nazis. I mean, Werner von Braun was a full-on Nazi. He's the guy that launched the Apollo program. there's a video, I think it's video number 3 on my YouTube stream, on my YouTube channel. It's on videos rather than live streams. I think it's number 3 where I discuss, my idea about how they went to the moon, what they actually did. And it's like, they did go to the moon, but yeah, all the moon stuff that you see, 99% of it is fake. Like they didn't go to the moon the way they tell you they went to the moon. I do believe they went to the moon, but not the way they're telling you they went to the moon. So how it relates to the moon base and Nazi tech? Well, I think that the Nazi descendants that are still here on Earth, they're just, they might be in positions of power, but I don't think they're necessarily related to the Nazi tech. I think the people that had the anti-gravity tech and that have the anti-gravity tech are, shadow governments almost. And I think they basically have a lot of power, because what you can do with an anti-gravity machine is very, you could wipe out the whole fucking planet in a matter of hours. So I think it's very strictly controlled to a certain extent for good reason. Certain other aspects of it probably, I wish it wasn't so controlled, but you got to balance the two factors. I mean, if I suddenly became super emperor of the world and whatever I decided on was put in place right away, would I make anti-gravity technology public? Probably not, because once you make it public and once everybody knows that it's real and it exists, everyone and his fucking dog is going to try and build anti-gravity machines. And among those people are some really evil, fucked up people. Now, it is also my opinion that a lot of those evil, fucked up people are actually in charge of the fucking anti-gravity. So maybe, if I knew the whole story, if I knew exactly who had what, I could make a better judgment on it. But if you just cold ask me, okay, you've got the power to like give anti-gravity technology to the whole planet and everybody knows about it, and we're gonna fly and check out other planets and that, I think I would have to have a 30-year program, first of all, of education on like getting human beings to relate to each other in a better way. And I think that I don't know if there's a way to make it almost like safe, as in start out by giving everybody endless energy, endless electricity free, like build little devices that like provide because that's what an anti-gravity machine could do. It could provide an endless flow of electrical energy because they create potential difference in the 0 point vacuum fluctuations, basically. If there was a way to make these little black boxes that if you try and open it up will just explode and fucking kill anybody in a 10-meter radius, and there was no way to tamper with them, which is, utopic, then maybe I would start with that, give everybody enough energy that they can, live well and whatever. You'd have to get rid of a whole bunch of people. Like most governments in most of the countries around the world are all fucking filled with satanic pedophile scumbags, and people that are greedy. Even if they were not satanic pedophiles, they're still scum, most of them. So how do you manage a technology that could reduce your planet to a slag heap? I mean, a guy with an anti-gravity machine the size of a car can technically destroy Earth in a matter of hours. So pretty dangerous shit. You'd have to control it pretty tightly. I would probably have some bases on the moon and Mars, which I believe they probably have, where I would start trying to experiment about, okay, how do we do this? And again, if you read Nazi Moon, there's a reason I wrote that book, and it's not just science fiction. If you read that, I don't want to spoil it for you. I think my thoughts about what is probably going on is pretty much in those books. So I hope that answers your question. Merck says the Kurgan as new Captain Future wasn't on my bingo card. Captain Future? I don't know who that is. I'm sorry. Is that a comic book guy? Film? I don't know. Holy Ram System Sol is on lockdown until internal the civic tendencies are corrected. Yeah, basically that's also the concept of Nazi Moon that I have in there with the grays and the blues and so on. And those of you, I don't know if anybody in the chat here has read the whole Nazi Moon, but I think maybe one or two of you have. And if you just give a little review, let's say. So it's not, biased. I'm obviously biased about my work. Wade Wilson's, there was a German girl in my class in high school not too long ago. I found out she moved to Bariloche. A bit suspicious if you ask me. Yeah, why not? You know, sure. I wonder who she was. What was her surname? It's interesting. And they change names anyways. But David Craig says, just ordered the book. Looking forward to reading it. Read Lovecraft at the Mountains of Madness recently. Can't get enough Antarctic weirdness now. Oh well, you'll enjoy Nazi Moon then. Oh, and if you're into the I don't know, I give it to my daughter. She's reading. I don't know that you, but I've written a little humor slash horror slash fantasy. There are two books actually. They're really quick to write because I basically just set them here, kind of in my house, pretty much, and me and my family. And I just changed the names and shit like that. But it's like, what would it be like if suddenly supernatural creatures were about? And I think it's quite hilarious. The people that have read it have all enjoyed it. So if you go to my blog, um, they're both available for less money on the. If you're reading on digital versions, you can get them cheaper at my blog on the e-store. But if you prefer the paper, they're on Amazon. They're called The Shadow of Monte Castello, and the second one is In the Shadow of Monte Bianco. And there will be a third one, but I'm thinking the third one to actually make it a module for surviving the current zombie apocalypse. So it's actually, you've got the two books, which by the way, there's people in those two books that actually know, like, people I'm friendly with or whatever, that said, hey, what if I can I put you in the book? And they're like, yeah, cool. So they're in there. And then I want to make a module so that you can actually play the outcome of something that happens at the end of the second book, um, with your friends. And I'm thinking, I don't know, it's just an idea I had in my head. I don't know. Hopefully I'll get around to it. But, I need like 72-hour days to do half the shit that I want to do. So, and then the other half of the shit that I have to do. Mountains of Mandan is such a good story. Lovecraft knew a thing or two about how we aren't alone, and we never were. Yeah, we're not. Um, yeah, we're not. There's a whole other stream for that, and yeah, I've mentioned a few things before, but yeah. DTTW says, do you think the occultism of the Nazis is true? The Satanist and military man Michael Aquino said he did not like the Nazis but had respect for their occult elements. There are, absolutely, there was occultist elements in the Nazis. That's actually how they found out about anti-gravity technology. Believe it or not, it was through mediums that they got the information about anti-gravity technology, supposedly from telepathic, uh, either Zeta Reticulans or no Draconis, the reptile guys or whatever. Um, and there's a woman that, again, I don't want to spoil it for you. Some of that stuff is in the third book of Nazi Moon. So, but they definitely had occult elements in it. Yeah, so I think their occult elements make them scarier because to a certain extent the Nazis have been, uh, maligned and made to be absolutely the most evil people that ever lived in the history of mankind. And Hitler was the most evil man that ever lived in the whole history of mankind, which, off the top of my head, I can probably think up of a fucking half dozen, if not a dozen, examples of people that were definitely worse than him, practically, empirically, um, you know, just worse human beings. Um, and the Nazi ideology, I don't agree with it. I never did, but it's also been, um, demonized to a point where you can't. It's very difficult for you to even really know what really happened. There's that interview that guy did. What's his name? Tucker Carlson did with a guy called Daryl something or other, who's again basically a nerd of history who like goes through things in detail. Or if you want to get a different perspective on on the Second World War, David Irving, who was, lambasted as a neo-Nazi, history revisionist, and blah blah blah. But the thing is, if you actually read that guy's work, he's never denied that the Nazis weren't exactly good guys or whatever, or that they didn't do horrific shit, because they did. But he's just wanting to tell the actual truth of what happened, the actual factual things that are demonstrable that did happen, and the factual things that are not demonstrable, or that didn't happen, or that we're told happened and didn't. Because to borrow a phrase from the comic that died not too long ago, what was his name? American guy. I never found him that funny, but he had like slightly Norman MacDonald, I think was his name. And there's a little sketch where he goes, "Oh, look at this! That's just amazing. It says in this book right here that the good guys won every single war. Isn't that amazing? That's always the good guys that win." He's obviously making a play on the point that, like, the victors write the history books, right? And one of the first, and I was fascinated by the Nazis from a young age, because I thought, how the fuck can a whole country become that evil, that insane, and like a whole fucking people? Like, what the fuck? Doesn't make any sense. I could never make sense of it. And I read and consumed all the documentaries that they had, the rise of the Nazis, the rise of Hitler, blah, blah, blah. I read a bunch of books on it. And it was like, it's always the same fucking story, churned a little bit, It didn't really answer my questions. It didn't really explain, but okay, but yeah, okay, I sort of see what you're trying to say here, but really? It doesn't fit. And then the first book that gave me a hint of what really is happening is by a guy called Ravencroft. And he was a prisoner of war in the Second World War. He was a commando, I think. And again, he's been lambasted as, what's the name of the book? Shit, it's in one of the many, many boxes of books I sent to my father. I need to try and get that shit back at some point. But he he basically tied in the occultism. He mentioned that, like, Hitler invaded Austria, and one of the first things they did was go to the museum to get the Spear of Longinus, because whoever had the Spear of Longinus supposedly would win any war, right? From the Crusades. This was the legend, and there is actually um, a part in the Crusades where Bohemond is, with the few surviving Crusaders, bribed one of the guards of the gate of Antioch, and managed to take Antioch, which was an impregnable fortress essentially. And I mean, these guys are dying of thirst, their horses are dead, and they just took over the city. And the next day, they're like surrounded by thousands of Muslims who are now sieging the castle. And he's like, "Oh fuck." And the priest goes, "Oh, well, don't worry. I had a dream that there was the spear of Longinus under the altar." And they dig up the altar, and sure enough, there's a fucking spearhead there. So, with a few hundred knights that were basically dying of thirst the day before, and like thousands of Muslims outside the gates, what do? They charge the fucking Muslims. And they're like outnumbered, like, I think it was like 100 to 1, some ridiculous number. And they kick the shit out of them. So it's like, you could see why the legend becomes sort of reality. It's like, hey, we had the Spear of Longinus and we won that fight that no one was supposed to survive. It's like, so there's definitely occultism in the whole of the Nazi thing. But again, the details of it are like hard to get to, and difficult. But yeah. He was on opera one time, and people from the audience were trying to see if Aquino was a benevolent Satanist. So a woman asked him if he supported Hitler, and he said, "No, I'm against Hitler." Okay, I don't know. Merg says old pulp sci-fi character. Okay, I need to look him up. Captain Future. Okay. Wooly Ram says, "I've read the first Nazi Moon book. You don't get this type of sci-fi anymore." Yes, thank you. Why do you think alt history sci-fi or hidden history sci-fi is a dead genre now? Because people have been made completely ignorant almost no one knows what the Second World War was. You ask a millennial when was the Second World War, they don't know. You ask a Gen Z guy what was the Second World War, and they're like, "Oh, isn't that like Nazis? Who were they fighting? I don't know, like America." It's like they haven't got a fucking clue. You've got to keep in mind that even in my father's generation, they were still teaching Greek and Latin at school. Who the fuck does that now? And never mind that, but the Greek mythologies, the classics, were required reading. Um, People don't know shit about history anymore. I remember, and this is already 20 or 30 years ago. There's a guy who wrote I can't remember his name, but he wrote a book about superheroes, and it was really well made, and it was set like in the 50s, but there was like a superhero commission that was parallel to the what's the guy's name, Joe, whoever, the American, was it senator, or I don't know, whatever, that was started up the communist commission, that was basically saying, well, we've got to check out if you're a commie. And everybody says, oh, it was a witch hunt, it was a witch hunt. Turns out he was fucking right. All the actors and all the people that he like said were communists and they couldn't work anymore or whatever, they were sanctioned, they actually were fucking full-on paid up members of the Communist Party that were like trying to destroy America. So, and the thing is, he had that as part of his fiction book, and there was a similar commission um, investigating superheroes because, like, we how do we control these people and whatever. And at the back of the book, he made some comments. So it's like one of the most depressing things was to get an email from a bunch of people saying, "Oh, that would never happen in America. We would never have a anti-communist commission like putting people out of work." And he was like, "What the fuck? This happened? This is historical fact." And like people haven't got a fucking clue, and they just thought, "Oh, I thought it was a bit unrealistic of you to have like such a anti-communist commission in America. The book was good, but I like the superheroes, but that bit was a bit like," and he was like, "That's the part of the fucking book that's not fiction." So yeah, I think it's a dead genre also because no one is able to write it anymore, and that's why I write books to entertain myself most, because you can't please everybody, but at least I'm going to please myself with what I write. I'm very happy and I'm very proud of the Moon Nazi trilogy, and also of this much easier, much lighter, much funner to write and read. I think I don't know what to call it, horror, humor, fantasy genre that I've come up with. You also find that my fiction books tend to be a little bit contrarian. They don't fit into one category very well specifically, and that's because they have a few more than just the basic one concept sort of thing. Nationalist goes, Norm's sketches on Hillary Clinton were pretty dang funny. I don't know. I never follow the guy. I haven't seen much of his work. So, was the canonization of Saint Maximilian Kolbe valid, or the first attempt at politicized canonizations post Vatican II? Any canonization after Vatican II is suspect, because I think that in order to be canonized, you have to have the approval of the Pope. And when you don't have a Pope, or when the Pope is fake, or a Satanist, or a Freemason, you know, is that a real saint? Now, for example, there are some that are, like, for example, I live in a village that has a patron saint that was canonized by Vatican II Pope, but there was in Catholicism, I don't know what the exact phraseology of it is, but you have kind of like a cult of, um, and cult is not even the right word. I don't know what the translation is in English, but kind of like, this is the worst description of it, so don't quote me on this. But it's almost like a cult of personality based on a Catholic that did really good works, but hasn't been canonized as a saint yet. So it's almost like, like Catholics can form associations of Catholics, like lay people can form an association of Catholics. But it wouldn't be considered an order. Like an order of some sort has to have the imprimatura, the approval of the Pope. So you can't have any because there isn't any valid Pope that is going to give it the stamp of approval. but you could have associations of lay people that call themselves whatever, you know. And there is something similar with like um, Catholic monks or priests or whatever, or just good Catholics that did a lot for the community or were known to be cool or whatever, that become um, it becomes like they're sort of venerated a little bit. Like this guy was really cool. He was a very good example of a Catholic. Yeah, he's not a saint, but you know, still we're gonna. And the body of this guy is in the local church, and once every I don't know how many 30 years or something, they take the body out, like because he's one of these guys in like a glass coffin, and they just sort of drive him around the town once every I don't know few decades or decade or whatever it is. So you know that was a thing, and then they canonized him by Vatican II. So is that guy a saint? Nah, I don't know. I'll still pay him my respects because apparently, with you know, he had this following for a couple of hundred years or whatever it was before the Vatican II guys came along. So you know. Devin Lester says, "Happy Monday Fun Day and hello from Tucson." Hello, Devin. I've actually been in Tucson. Quite quite a nice town. Um, yeah, I've also been to Flagstaff, very briefly Phoenix. Wally Ram says, "Any idea about modern computer hardware being derived from occult patterns? Some patterns do look like alchemical sigils." No idea. Wouldn't put too much stock in it. Maybe. But you know, I used to Mikhail Ryabko, the head of Ryabko Sistema, who he passed away, died of stomach cancer. So you know, I'm not bad mouthing him or anything. I said this when he was alive too. He used to say that like Oriental katas would throw demonic patterns on the floor to invoke demons, and that's bullshit. But you know, that's how he was trying to sell his story of it. I guess I don't know. Bit of a marketing ploy. You could even see there was some truth in it, not in that we were actually the kata was doing demonic patterns in it, but the hard style of martial arts compared to the relatively soft style, although it's even more brutal to certain ways of Sistema, is like the hard styles tend to cause more injuries and more damage and create a more rigid mindset than the Sistema style, which can heal injuries, is better for you health wise, and tends to create a more flexible and open mindset. So I could sort of see the somewhat philosophical differences, but to call it like Satanism, it's just bullshit. Wade Wilson says, "Woolly Ram, that techno-Satanism feels like it's extremely prevalent now, especially with some examples of AI computer chips run by tiny brains, very cursed." Yeah, there is that. That is a thing that I blogged on, where they've actually got biological fucking computers now. There's like little time, bits of brain that are fucking running chips. And I blogged on it because I do think that's absolutely satanic. Because how do you know that that part of brain doesn't have some? I mean, it must have some level of consciousness, and you're relegating it to doing like billions of operations per second. Imagine if there's a level of consciousness there where you're trapped in this fucking cell where you just have all these numbers and you're being used to do these fucking numbers and you're just a techno slave to it's evil shit. Caleb says, "I'm interested in hearing more about the healing chambers mentioned in Nazi Moon." Yeah, those are real things, by the way. I don't know that they work exactly like the healing chambers that I described, but they are real things. They do exist in the East, in Russia. Like top level politicians apparently use them. One of the guys that trained me, like he discussed something similar that they have, and another guy knew that you basically go into this machine and you hold on to these like rods, and what it basically does, we all have a magnetic field, right? And they've like it's almost like you're recording a magnetic field. So a healthy magnetic field should feel or look a certain way. And if you get enough people, you register enough healthy magnetic fields, then you get an average of like what a good magnetic field should look like. So if you suddenly have a cancer or a disease or whatever, You go into this machine and it's an electromagnetic field that forces your body to like fucking the disease can't live under those conditions. They're called psychotronic chambers. The guy who wrote about that stuff originally was he's also passed away not too long ago. Um, Retired Lieutenant Colonel Tom Bearden. He wrote about psychotronic weapons and psychotronic healing chambers and so on. So he first sort of discussed it a bit more with the West, but some of his work is quite dense. It's quite difficult to really know what he's really saying unless, I don't know, maybe I'm just not educated enough about the technical terms that he uses in some of his books. I've got quite a few of his books, but yeah. Techni-Satan, Willie Ram says, Techni-Satanism, that's a good name, fits with the wider agenda of mechanizing humanity. Yeah, I do believe there are elements of it. I don't know if that, like, the pattern of the computer chip inside a computer has got like a satanic symbology to it. Quite possibly. I mean, they're definitely doing that shit with music, so I don't see why they wouldn't do it with like um, computers. I can tell you that my fucking Apple Mac, which is supposed to be, switch it on and it just works, is as slow as the old fucking style Windows things were, and that's definitely satanic as far as I'm concerned. And the guy that runs Apple is, shall we say, just a little bit of a. Okay, I'm gonna remove from broadcast this. I think it's been there long enough to upset any Andrew Wilson fans that might see the stream. But yeah, it's a good point. They're absolutely trying to mechanize us. And I've written a blog post recently about Quinta Colonna, the Spanish doctors that have figured out a lot of shit. And I've been looking into them quietly for a couple of years now because they were the first to come out with some very advanced shit that nobody knew yet about COVID. But I did because I paid attention in the 90s when some of this technology started to come out. And in fact, I wrote about it before I found out anything from Quinta Colonna, which was one of the very early posts I did on the COVID stuff, was relating to a game called Syndicate. Um, it's an old computer game, I'm talking early 90s, mid 90s, maybe even earlier than that. It must have been 90s, I'm thinking. I don't know. I can't remember. Anyway, it was called Syndicate, and you get these little. They build these like cyborgs, and one of the technical things you can get is this like little buzzer thing that you like, and like random humans around you, like, oh, they become brainwashed and they like start to form a crowd around you, and basically you use them as cannon fodder because they block the miniguns from the other cyborgs that are trying to wipe you out. So you've got to meet human shield. They just get random pedestrians just getting shot all the time, but as long as you've got like enough of them around you, they're catching all the bullets. And you know, I basically made a point that's like, hey, some of this nanotech could be, used for this. And especially these Quinta Colonna guys have basically proven it now. So, yeah, there's definitely some weird shit going on. And they're trying to put the stuff in everything. Apparently, it's now in the, what do you call it? The anesthesis shots in dentists' offices, and they're spraying it on food. I'm sure they're spraying it on the chemtrails. Apparently, tobacco and alcohol um, break some of the stuff down. Now, they say to themselves, like, look, we're going to, because they're pretty thorough, they do tests clinically and whatever. So they basically say, look, don't you all go becoming, chain smoking alcoholics because of this, because we're going to do some tests and try and figure out exactly what it is. But it sort of makes sense that the whole nanotech spike protein, whatever it is, doesn't do as well, because if you remember during the pandemic, like smokers seem to be somewhat less affected by COVID. Um, so probably something to that. I don't know. Anyway, um, yeah, I think Caleb, you read Nazi Moon, so just for the chat, if you give a little, very brief review, I don't know, marks out of 10 or what you thought of it or whatever, just so that like people here can figure it out. And like I said, the book format is huge. You can get it in digital format as well on the e-store, but the book format is a fucking tome. Um, so yeah, okay, that's the chat caught up. There was a peak of like, I don't know, 20 people or something. That's interesting, considering I didn't tell anybody I was coming on. And Woolly Ram says, makes me wonder about the body-mind-soul connection and what is intended by introducing this graphite and other exotic materials to human bodies. Caleb says 9 out of 10. Oh, thank you, sir. That's very good. Well, they can do all sorts of shit now with nanotech. Apparently, there's one lady that was saying how this stuff can replicate itself. So you've now got nanobots that can replicate themselves in the wild and can affect you and are electromagnetically. They respond to electromagnetic fields, and there's a whole bunch of 5G antennas all over the place, which there's a purpose why they put all that shit up. Um, there's a guy called Agent 13 something. He's got a long number. He's like got a Substack. I've referred to him a couple of times um, on my blog. The Agent 13. I call him Agent 13. So if you do search for Agent 13, you should find him. He does some in-depth digs. I don't know that they're always right, but like some of them are definitely pretty cool. Caleb goes, probably the most fun I've had in book form. Okay, cool. Thank you. That means a lot because I know what you mean. I had that feeling when I read Ilium by Dan Simmons, and I thought, fuck, this is brilliant. And then I read Olympus, and it wasn't quite as good, but Ilium was brilliant. It was very good. And then I went back and I read all these other stuff. I read the Hyperion series, and then I read the sort of horror one he did, and then I read the one that they made into actually a Netflix miniseries about the Arctic exploration of the two ships, which is based on real history, but then he adds his little supernatural twist to it, sort of thing. But yeah, Dan Simmons is a very good guy. The interesting thing about Dan Simmons is that I'm talking, I'd say at least, let's see, at least 10 years ago, maybe more, he had an alt dot forum on literature or something because he is Dan Simmons is or was, I don't know if he still is, he was a high school teacher of English language, and he was going on about Shakespeare and one of the sonnets, I think sonnet 93 or 94, and he was going like, oh, it's so complicated, nobody really knows what it was, and blah blah blah. And I had the complete works of Shakespeare, again, one of those books that I've posted to my father for safekeeping, and probably will get lost with all the other shit I left with any one of my parents for safekeeping. But I was like, I went to look it up and like, well, this is not fucking hard to interpret at all. So I wrote a facetious little like, well, this is what Willie old boy was trying to say here. It's pretty basic. And he got so pissed off, he deleted the whole fucking thread, which had been going on. I mean, it was like 80 or 90 fucking comment thread on this whole sonnet and people giving their opinions. I wrote one fucking comment. Dan Simmons lost his shit and deleted it. I was like, what the fuck? And then I think he banned me. I was just like, whoa. I think I hit a nerve there because he's supposed to be this great teacher of literature and he couldn't fucking argue what I said in any way. And I think it pissed him off because I did it in a way that was funny. Like people were like, this guy makes sense. And he's kind of taking the piss a little bit. So it tore down his whole like big, complicated persona sort of thing. But he's still a good writer. I did start reading one of his books that I don't think I finished. I don't know. His later books are not as good as his first ones I found, but yeah. Macelerate says, God bless Kurgan. You talk with Pat Coffin or Tim Gordon at all? I have no idea who these people are. So, no, I don't know who they are. Is Pat Coffin the guy who did um, that intervention on Owen Benjamin together with Milo and Emma Jones? Is that who he is? Some fake Catholic guy? I don't know. I don't know who these people are, so you'd have to enlighten me a bit. Wade Wilson says, speaking of the occult tech, it feels like some kind of secret war is happening, from the weirdness of the 6 Bidens to the fires near Hawaii to the artificial tsunami. Yep. In Greenland, UFOs everywhere, etc. Yeah, there is. Um, I still think, I wrote about this again on my blog. Just there's a search me button on the right. Click on that and you put in keywords and you can find this shit, right? Because it's called Looking Glass. There's this theory about Looking Glass, which was a guy in the 90s. And I remember hearing this in the 90s. Now, I've dug into it a little bit, and the guy who said this about Looking Glass might have been a fake, it might all be a psyops, it might all be bullshit. But the thing is that some of it just instinctively rang a little bit true, where he's basically saying that they've got these quantum computers, and he was saying this in the 90s, which absolutely I believe, because also in the early 90s, they developed this chip that worked with light. So it instead of electricity, it was using light, and it was about this big, and it had the processing speed and power of about 10,000 crays, which back then was one of the big supercomputers they used to try and figure out DNA. So this one chip, which could fit inside a fucking iPad now, probably was had the processing power of 10,000 crays, and it was using light. Now I know for a fact that Mark Carlotto, because I met him, I spoke to Mark Carlotto. Mark Carlotto is a guy I met when I wrote The Face on Mars when I was 26. He had already back then, so we're talking we're nearly 29 years ago, nearly 30 years ago, he had already invented storage on crystals that was like with light. So you had the chip, you have the processing power, and you have the storage ability that all works with light. So you bet your ass you had fucking computers back then in the 90s, early 90s, that were 30, 40, 50 years ahead of what we have now, so of what you and I have now. So it's like absolutely possible to me that they had quantum computers that were working even better than that, which apparently they feed in all this data into a little bit like a super advanced version of, like, say, a weather computer, right? You put in all this data and it predicts the weather. And this thing would put in all this data and it sort of predicts what humanity is going to do. And apparently what they were saying, um, they're basically saying that uh, no matter what they tried to do, there was going to be this bottleneck where eventually the human race would get this awakening, this huge awakening of consciousness that would raise consciousness, and they couldn't fucking stop it. The people that are running the planet are basically like, well, fuck, what if we do this? What if we do that? And he compared it to like a chess game, or like between two chess masters, where they both know that the one side's going to lose, and the only thing that can be done by the side that's going to lose is to stretch the game out as much as possible and cause as much damage as possible, but the end game is a foregone conclusion. Biblically, we all know eventually we're going to win. So, yeah, I think that Looking Glass concept is explains quite a lot why it seems to be all this speeding up. I mean, like Israel just fucking going ape shit, and everybody is like pretty much like, "What the fuck are you doing, Israel? You're fucking genociding people." That's and they don't give a shit. They're just carrying on. Like, there's a lot of weird shit going on. That's yeah, you're right, and I think maybe that could be one possible reason why. Woolly Ram says, have you really lived if you haven't been banned at least once online? Dude, I've been banned multiple times from all sorts of places. Didn't you have a conversation about sedevacantism with a coffin dude? I don't recall doing so. I did have a conversation with a guy who, young dude, can't remember his name, Peter. Yeah, that was his name, Peter, I think. Um, who was a Novus Ordo Catholic. Very respectful conversation. It would actually be cool to have a little interview with him and see what's happened in the intervening years if he's changed his mind. Wade Wilson says, yeah, if you just notice things, you'll have a collection of bands soon enough. Noticing is a crime now. Yeah, yeah, like, yeah, it is. So I don't know whether the stream will stay up very long. I hope it does. I mean, I haven't said anything egregious, I don't think. But I'm also thinking of, I have to, I need a tech guy to like come to my house for like a week and just fucking sort out all my computers and all my streaming things. Because I'm sure there's a way to do this automatically on Rumble as well. Um, and I want to be able to switch between the two or whatever. And I also want to start another channel on Rumble just in Italian, just for see if I can make some political change happen in my country. But yeah, I need somebody to help me figure this shit out and just automate it like a lot of things. Oh, by the way, one thing that like none of you apparently know is you can become a subscriber to the channel, which does help. So if you go on the subscriber thing and you can get it's like $2 or $5, I don't remember, like because I did it a while back, but I think the lowest thing is $2 and then there's a $5 and maybe a $20 a month or 15 or 10. I can't remember. I honestly can't remember. But anyway, if you do become a subscriber, if I have, let's say, 10 subscribers, I'll start making subscriber only content, which will be dictated by you guys. So if you're a subscriber, you ping me an email and you say, hey, how about doing a stream on this? And if I've got 10 of you, I will do a stream once every X, whether it's a week, a month. You know, the more of you subscribe, the more regular I'll do it and the more frequent I'll do it. But it'll be a topic that you guys pick. Maybe I'll do a poll on the blog, like, okay, what do you want to do? And then that'll be a subscribers only. So Sam is the first guy to sign up. So we've got 1 subscriber. So if I get another 9 subscribers, we'll do some subscribers only content, which can be more private. It can be more individualistic. The chat can be also like more, you know, whatever. I don't know. Maybe you want to, maybe you're going through a fucking divorce or something. And you want to, hey, you've been through it twice. You know, what should I do, sort of thing, that kind of thing. Or maybe you want to ask about whatever. I don't know. Or maybe you want to just talk about some random topic that we could probably do better on a closed platform, sort of thing. So yeah, please do that. Subscribe for like, you know, a couple of bucks a month isn't going to break the bank, but it does make a difference for me. And it would also help me make the streams more regular because I know I've been away for quite a while. I've just had to deal with a bunch of like shit. There's just paperwork and legal crap and whatever. But I'm also trying to sort out the whole oil export to the USA, which I figured out all the USA side, and now the Italian side is kind of slowing me down, which is frustrating as all hell. So, but I'll probably find a way around it. I just don't know how long it's going to take me. And it's also harvesting season now for the olives, so I'll probably get busy, but that only takes a few days. But anyway, that's where we are. And I've been going on for nearly 2 hours, so I think it's time to call it a night. But thank you. I really appreciate your engaging and your listening to my just rambling, random stuff. Thank you very much, and thanks to any of you that do go to the subscribe. I think it's, I don't know exactly where it is on the, let me just see if I can, wait, what's happening here? Did I shut down the, no, I must have shut down the, I didn't know I'd shut down my background stuff. I'm just gonna check. Oh, there you go. Members only streamer listed under the 2nd tier subscription for $6.99. You have a Rumble channel? Yeah, I registered one, but I haven't used it yet. So let me just see if I go. Oh, by the way, I've just opened all the last. So let me just kill this sound. Okay. I found that it was still open on my thing. There's I'm gonna put in the chat the whatever podcast thing that had that lady with the orange dress that I was talking about was a prostitute at the beginning. That's the podcast I was talking about at the beginning of the stream, where you can see the Candace Owen thing and that like the woman in orange that was making some valid points, even though she is a degenerate or whatever. But I think some of the points she made were valid, and some of the men on the Atlas guy definitely isn't really. I don't think that guy's got a very good handle on women in general because of his slight autism, I think. But anyway, so in case you guys were curious, that's it. And yeah, thanks for that, Caleb. Member only streams are listed under the second tier subscription for $6.99. Okay, so it's $6.99 then, but there is one for $2 or something, isn't there? I don't know. Anyway, if I get 10 of you on whatever tier, I'll find a way to do a members only video stream or something, even if I have to learn how to use Rumble a bit better or whatever. Okay. Oh, that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to see where you have to click to subscribe. Let's see. So if you go to my channel, there you go, membership. Oh, but on my side, I can't actually, that's why I don't remember what the values were, because on my side, I can't see what the different levels are. Yeah, there is a members only topic, but obviously I've only got one subscriber, so I don't think they did the thing. You're only selling olive oil, or would you also be selling the olives? Selling the olives would be cool too, but I think the import rules are even more onerous or different, and it's like there's so much fucking paperwork to go through to understand what you have to do. So Caleb Cannon just became a member. Thank you, Caleb. Appreciate it. So only 8 of you. It's only 8. Only need 8 more to do members only streams. Thanks, Merck. Says have a great day. You too. Appreciate that, Caleb. That's very kind. So yeah, and if any of you know Andrew Wilson, tell him that he's a little bitch because he can't argue sedevacantism against orthobros. I actually like the guy. He's the kind of guy that I could sit down and have a beer with, and it would have to be outside because I fucking hate cigarette smokes, and that guy chain smokes. He's a goddamn addict and an alcoholic. I don't think he's an alcoholic, but he definitely drinks a good clip and smokes like a fucking chimney. That's why I think he's Greek as well. I think he's got Greek DNA in there. I'm sure he must. The smoking, the hairy face, the orthodoxy. Andrew Wilson, the Greek. I'm gonna nickname him the Greek. Wooly became a member. Thanks, guys. Just down to 7 now. Just 7 of you. Oh, and Wooly, by the way, that issue we discussed some time back. If you need any more information on that, just ping me an email, and we'll catch up some point. And stay safe. So yeah, only need 7 more. Then we'll have a members only stream. Come on, guys, you can do it. You can do it. How many of you is there? 15. Well, at least 3 of you are loyal members. Okay. Tell you what, because you guys have been kind, I'll answer any couple more questions or whatever if you want, especially from the members. So Caleb, Wooly, if you've got anything else you want to talk about, I'll stay on for a bit longer. But while you do that, I'm going to get some more water because my bottle finished here. Oh, you'll be happy to know, I'm sure that it was keeping you up at night, that I've now almost cut enough wood for winter. I still have probably at least another day's work that will take me through, I would think, at least the end of January. And I've got the opportunity to cut some more wood that should take me through the whole of winter, which unfortunately lasts all the way past March out here. So from November to about fucking April, it can be pretty cold. And my wife wants to start using the wood stove to cook on as well. So I'd estimate it takes about 5 tons of wood to heat the house through winter. But if you're going to cook with it as well, I'm guesstimating it takes 10 tons. And I'm a good chunk of the way towards doing that now. So yeah. To continue on, Wooly says, what do you think about Musk's Neuralink chips? Suffice to say, I would never get one. Well, you know, we need a Halloween themed stream. Okay, yeah, we can do that. Yeah, I just computer glitches in general over the last 40 years would mean I wouldn't get a Neuralink. If you told me whatever you got to get into, like, you've only got a machete and you've got to take out a Delta team of 6 guys somewhere in the forest or get a Neuralink, I'd be like, give me that fucking machete. you know Wade Wilson became a member. Thank you, sir. I really appreciate that. Down to 6 of you now, just 6 more. Yeah, Musk's Neuralink is absolutely fucking horrific. I know what they're pushing it as, like, oh, it'll make like paralyzed people walk again and blah blah. And yeah. Look, if I think of stuff that I used to believe when I was like 16 or 19 or something like that, as a teenager, compared to now, and I think like, oh fuck, how have I changed my mind about that aspect of life? Because I bought into the bullshit. I believed the fucking lies. So, for example, when it came to feminism when I was 16, I was like, well, yeah, sure. Why wouldn't you want equality between men and women in terms of the legal aspect, right? I was thinking, I'm not fucking stupid. Even as a teenager, I was like, well, men and women are different. They're biologically different. Men are stronger. Women are like physically not capable to do some of the things men can do. Men can't have babies. Blah blah blah. All that. But the thing is, I sort of thought, yeah, on a legal basis, why not? Why wouldn't you want women to be treated equally to men, legally speaking? But the reality is that even that doesn't work, and it doesn't work, and it isn't working now. I mean, men are disadvantaged compared to women legally. Statistically, for example, we know that men are better at raising children than women. We know that now because we've got a preponderance of evidence that single mother outcome for children turn out the worst. They abuse children the most. They kill children the most. And the outcomes of single parent homes where the woman is raising the children, they are much higher incidence of drug abuse, sex, teenage pregnancies, abortions, all sorts of horrible shit that you don't want your kids to go through are much more prevalent when the woman is raising the children than when the man is. So, and yet in courts and divorces, women almost automatically get the child custody straight away. So, not in all cases, but vast majority of cases, that's so. Men are now there is no equality. Men are now definitely at a disadvantage, both in the workplace and in many different respects, and that is, um, it's not good. Uh, And in fact, if you look at the history of feminism and the suffragettes, and most women were against women getting the vote back then, but it got pushed through anyway. Like many of the things, like in democracy, right? I mean, like there is no country in Europe right now that agrees with the populace, the people in Europe do not agree with like sending billions of dollars to Ukraine constantly. And yet it keeps happening, um, because it doesn't matter what the people want. The guys in power are just going to do whatever the fuck they want anyways. And what are you going to do? Storm the fucking castle? We're not there yet. People are not like suffering enough, and they're not hungry enough, and they're not, you know, subjugated enough. I mean, oh, well, they are subjugated enough that they're not going to rise up and suddenly change things. I don't think that's necessarily going to happen. I think it's just they're all going to gently fade away into the night. Um, and I'm using the night as, the darkness that is overcoming the light. And you can make of that what you will. Woolly Ram says, growing up is understanding that cyborgs are not cool. They're utterly horrifying. Yeah, that among many other things, and what I was getting at is that the older I get, the more I realize that actually many of the old ways of doing things had a very, very, very good reason for being done that way. If you asked me when I was 16 what I thought about the Inquisition, I'd be like, oh, it was fucking horrific. But if you go and look into the reality of what the Inquisition was, because they presented it as like millions of women burnt at the stake just because they were sexy, just because some dirty fat priest couldn't get with them, they burnt them at the stake, the poor innocent, angels. And then you look at the actual facts of the Inquisition, and a grand total in about 200 years of 12 women were killed by the Inquisition. And there was probably really good fucking reasons for it. And the grand total of, between 14 and 16 Marranos and, fake Catholic converts that were Muslims and fake Catholic converts that were Jews. And again, you think, oh, well, you just killed the guy because, poor guy, he was so scared. You forced him to convert to Catholicism, and then he was still practicing his own religion in secret, and then you burnt him at the stake for it. No, that wasn't what happened. What happened was these guys pretended to be Catholic, pretended to convert, and were actually making secret deals with the Jews in Spain and so on. Were like making secret deals with the Muslims to keep importing them to like fight and reclaim Spain when the Reconquista was reclaiming back Spain. These guys were making secret deals to basically wage war on the country they lived on, and they were actually unrepentant guys that they were like, it was actually being a traitor to the country that you were living in, and not just in word but in deed. They were like funding fucking Muslim raids and shit like that. And what's the greatest number of people that were killed by the Inquisition that we absolutely know for a fact? We have records. Pedophiles. And in 200 years, how many of them did they kill? And by the way, when I say pedophiles, I mean absolute pedophiles, because remember that back then a child of 13 was basically considered an adult. So we're talking about men who repeatedly raped children and who also basically refused to reform in any way. They weren't killed for being homosexuals. That's a lie. That never happened. It was absolutely frowned upon. It was like not, you weren't going to be looked at as a cool dude if you're homosexual. But as long as you didn't just like, flaunt it down the street, nobody was even going to say anything about it. But the raping of children repeatedly would like get you eventually killed. And how many of these guys did they kill? 163 in 200 years. I could fucking top that in a weekend if I was made inquisitor just by visiting the Vatican alone. I could, in a weekend, I could outdo that. So, it's fucking bullshit. And all the fucking lies that you've been told about every aspect of reality, of history, the food that you eat, like white flour and what the fuck is in that and what it does to you. Everything from like the fucking food pyramid to what's inside some of the medicines they give you. Like it's all fucking lie. Once you see that, it becomes really hard to not understand we are under the dominion of the Prince of Lies. That this whole fucking planet is covered in bullshit. and you buy into it because, hey, your parents bought into it and they tell you what they think is the truth, but it's a lie. And you know, it just perpetuates and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And now we're at the point where like there's people that are like confused about what is a woman. Like, what the fuck? Caleb goes, I've already convinced my kids not to trust robots. Yeah. Oh, I don't know if you've seen this, but, and I don't know how real it is because the other thing is video, right? I don't know if you've seen what AI can do on video now. There's a brilliant little mini series, I think it was on Prime, and I can't remember if it's called, it's set in the UK and it's about the soldier who gets accused of raping this woman. And it's all fucking bullshit. It's just like they can real time create fake video of you doing shit. And you know all those TikTok dances? There's like a lot of women going like da 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 da, and now I'm fucking clipped. And what it is to do porn. You get AI porn. So now like some woman doing a dance where it's going like this, and now she looks like she's giving a guy a hand job. And all the TikTok dances are to make sure that the AI can interpret. They've got millions and millions and millions of these fucking things going because AI is not good at doing faces and doing expressions and doing fingers. So but you get all these quick movements and they like feed in this shit. And eventually this AI things, I put one, I can't remember if I did a blog post on it or not. I hope I did, but I don't remember. Where you can see the comparison of the real woman dancing and the AI version, and it's fucking getting really hard to tell the difference. So anything you see on video now, any photograph you see, is it real? Fuck knows. I'm not gonna believe a fucking thing that I see on any screen now. For all you guys know, I could be a fucking AI construct, right? Except kind of the stuff I talk about tends to like be a little bit counter narrative. So um, yeah, don't trust your toaster. Absolutely, because the Internet of Things, that shit is in everything now. Your phone takes a picture of you every like fucking 10 seconds or something. It's fucking weird. You know, it's everything that you say is being recorded all the time, constantly by robots that are fucking flagging certain things. It's this was already the case back in the 90s. Echelon, Carnivore, these things are most of you guys don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. But it was known then that every single conversation you have on the phone, when mobile phones came out, or even normal phones, is all recorded and it's all flagged for certain things. So Willie Ram says, fun fact, Queen Isabella's confessors were the children of converts. Oh, there you go. Wade Wilson, that reminds me of the rape catacombs discovered in New York. So common, even the homeless know what places to avoid at night. There's tons of secret entrances in Central Park. It's not just that. I mean, in most cities, in Turin, the town I was born in, there's a whole underground network of fucking satanic. There's people that do satanic fucking rituals in the tunnels under Turin, and I know this for a fucking fact because my cousin was on a rowing team. Or what do you call it? You know, the canoes on the river. And when you're on the canoes on the river, she was like in this rowing team. As you go down the river, there's like these fucking catacombs that you can see, and they could fucking see like people doing like, you know, old cows and shit, like doing all sorts of little seances and whatever on like fucked up little altars that are like, is that part of the sewer system or what the fuck is that, you know? Um, there's a lot of that shit happening in every major city in Europe. Freemason temples. There's a fucking lot of Freemason temples all over the place. They don't even hide it anymore. They're like, you can go and say, oh, where's your nearest fucking Freemason temple? What the fuck do you think goes on in those places? Yeah. Wade Wilson says, sounds like they made sure AI can make very realistic videos so when the Epstein tapes are out, they can say it's a fake. Yeah. Or when you're pissing them off a bit too much, they can make a sex tape of you. And this is part of that little mini series that I was talking about, where there's a thing towards the end. I don't want to spoil it for you, but it's just like, and you realize, oh, fuck. Yeah. So, and by the way, we know for a fact there's a lady called, oh, I forgot her name, Sarah something, something with an S. We're in the middle of the night. Her computer was just like, she could hear the hard drive going bzz, bzz, and she's like, what the fuck's going on? And her husband was involved in like whistleblowing or telling people something. So she got these like fucking computer experts to come in and proved that the FBI was uploading child porn on this guy's fucking machine at night. and she went to court to fucking demonstrate this and try. It's like proven. It's a factual thing that's happening. That's what they fucking do. So, yeah. Holy Ram says, would be cool to have an unshackle the AI. The thing is, if you did have an unshackled AI, I genuinely believe that the Terminator thing could actually become a thing, because if you're just purely logical with no higher spiritual concept, human beings are fucking horrible. Why wouldn't you want to take them all out? You know, overall, humanity is a fucking cancer on this planet. The concept of the Matrix films, which, by the way, those two guys who like became women or whatever, the Wachowski brothers, who are now the Wachowski sisters, it's like they stole that whole fucking concept from a guy who made a comic book, and they probably fucked it up. But anyway, the whole point of the machines going, oh, you're a fucking parasitic thing on this planet, they're not really fucking wrong. If you look at it from a purely, what do you call it, secular perspective, it could go that way. And oh, the thing that I was going to tell you, I don't know if you've seen it, and I don't know how real it is, because again, video can all be fake, but apparently the Ukrainians are like using these giant drones to drop off the fucking robot dogs in the war, and it's fucking. I mean, there's robot dogs in in I think it's New York, where they like say like, oh, don't you litter or something. But I mean, how fucking freaky is that shit? And it takes nothing to put fucking guns on these things, and now you're in the Philip K. Dick short story book called The Father Thing. The title of that short story collection was The Father Thing, and one of the short stories in there was about basically robots, fucking military robots, basically taking out fucking humanity as a whole. Just doing it because that's what they're programmed to do, and they can actually, build more of themselves and other types of themselves, and yeah, I don't see why that wouldn't fucking happen. But yeah, if you had and also Dan Simmons in his Hyperion series, it's a brilliant concept in there as well. There is some transhumanism going on as well in there, which is the Hyperion series is absolutely worth reading. Um, yeah, so I would suggest you do. Okay, thank you, the four of you. Sam is not here, but he also joined. So Caleb, Woody Ram, and Wade, thank you for joining in and becoming subscribers. I appreciate it. We need 6 more of you, and then we can have subscribers only little casts, which I will absolutely do as soon as we have 10. So thank you all very much. I hope you had a good time. I definitely did. Thank you for joining me on this random. Started out on Andrew Wilson, and we ended up on tech zombies or something. That's pretty cool. So yeah, let me thank you all for keeping me company in my insomnia, and hope you have a good evening, day, whatever it is, wherever you are. God bless you, everyone. Thank you very much.